good at that. That's like a Here's Johnny going crazy.
Yeah. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this fine radio program. It's Smoking and Toasting, craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We are coming to you today from the studio as we do show number 78, where we will be drinking craft beer from the Spindletap. It is a show that's brought to you by our normal sponsor, B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. Very excited about the show today, Ian, because Leo Longoria from Spindletap Brewing is going to join us and talk about beer. So it's going to be
it's pretty fun.
Yeah, he's going to be a lot of fun, and we have lots of
just judging by the pre-show
cool
jokes that we were passing back and forth.
Yes, and we also happen to know he's brought a couple of very cool, like, taproom only beers.
I'm pretty excited about that.
So I love what I know already of their brews that are commercially available. But the taproom only beers, this is where it starts to get really fun.
Yes.
So psyched about that. He'll be joining us. Plus, not only will we be sampling a number of Spindletap craft beers from the Spindletap Brewery in the greater Houston area, but we will also be trying some Tequila Avion from New York, New York. So very excited about that as well. So tequila, we haven't done tequila on the show in a little while, and to be honest,
it's been at least a couple episodes.
Yes, exactly. What is that? You remember that old commercial that used to be for like Wolf Brand Chili, where the guy would come on with the big, sort of like Sam Elliott voice, and he'd say, "How long has it been since you had Wolf Brand Chili?" And then he'd go, "Well, that's too long." That's kind of how I feel about the tequila. So anyway, a lot going on. There is a bit going on in the world of news, craft beer, and cigars. And Johnny Walker is introducing a new brand.
Really?
Yes, and it's going to be all about female empowerment, which is a big topic right now with all the Me Too stuff and people really thinking about women's rights and empowerment of women. So Johnny Walker is releasing and launching Jane Walker.
Nice.
So we'll tell you all about that coming up. And there's just so much going on. We're really excited to be in the studio today and be doing the show, and it's starting to feel nice outside here in Houston, Texas. And so I'm starting to think now about summer activities and being out on the porch and the balcony and drinking and having you over and having you bring a lot of cool beers.
We need to get together on the patio of B&B.
We do definitely need to do that. We're so overdue for that. That would be a lot of fun. So I know the weather's getting nicer. Did you smoke anything interesting this week, my friend?
I did, and I totally forgot to pull it up on my phone now.
Well, why don't you take a look and pull up your notes? I know
I'll tell you.
So I know you like to make notes when you smoke the cigars so that you can remember what the sensation was, and that's that's important because we don't always get to smoke live on the show. So
right. So I usually do take notes. I can wing this one. It's fine. I don't have to look it up. But I smoked kind of an old standby. It's a Drew Estate Big Dirt Natural.
Wow.
Or Natural Big Dirt is the size. They have funny names for all their
Somehow I had a feeling
stuff.
That's what you were going to do. I don't know how.
Yeah,
I
we might have talked about that at some point in time in the future.
Yes.
But that make sense. So these cigars, the Natural series, always have very much a sweetness on the tip of the cigar.
Well, and I always think of them as they released Naturals after they got so much publicity for releasing the acids, which were the infused, right?
Right.
So when they released the Natural, it's kind of their way of saying, hey, we also do these other cigars that are very non-infused, and it seemed like they really sort of defaulted to the very earthy kind of
so the Natural is a little departure from what I usually smoke because it's a much lighter cigar. It's definitely in the mild. I would say maybe on the bigger side of mild, but it's definitely in the mild range.
At most, yeah.
And it does. It has that sweetness that when you put that cigar in your mouth, that the tobacco has a sweetness to it that I don't know if they infuse it or they put it on there somehow, but it's really kind of a delightful little trip. It's a great big silky smoke from a not a very big cigar. It's the construction from Drew Estate has always been fantastic. I'm always happy with their construction. I don't think I've let me down at all. The smoke on this is very classic cigar with some sweetness to it. Very campfire, very cigar, very earthy, farm kind of flavors,
Right.
And it's just a joy. Like if you're just getting into smoking a cigar, this is a great cigar for you. My wife loves these. Pardon me.
Even the Naturals.
Even the Naturals, she loves those. That has
I know
a
she likes
sweetness on
the
the
flavored
end.
cigars,
Yeah, she likes those Drew Estate Java Mints very much, and that's a high quality infused cigar, not a cheapie, not a cheapie infused cigar. And they're expensive, but they're good. The Drew Estate Natural, they're not super cheap. You get exactly what you're paying for. I'm gonna put it 5 out of our price versus quality.
Yeah.
You get exactly what you're paying for, depending on what size you get. I think it's about a $6 cigar, and it's great. It's always a good go-to cigar. It's not a very long cigar. That's one of the reasons I keep them around, is because you can get into it and you can smoke it in a half hour, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I like the Natural Juicy Lucy.
I love the names on them. The names are funny. They got
Yeah.
the dirt, and they got the big dirt, and they got the Juicy Lucy, and they have the Cuba. And oddly enough, all of them are slightly different blends, too.
Slightly different blends.
So
I just want to remind people about the price to quality index. If you're new to the show, you might say, "Oh, he only gave it a 5." Well, 5 means that cigar was worth every penny that it cost.
Right.
It means basically it lived up to its reputation, it lived up to its price,
Yes.
and it did not disappoint. Anything above a 5 on the price to quality scale means it was worth more than it cost, or it smoked. Maybe it was, what'd you say it was, like a $5-6 cigar?
Yeah, I think it's about $6 cigar.
So if you gave it a 6 or a 6.5, it'd mean it smoked like a $9 or $10 cigar.
Right.
But in this case, it means you got what you paid for. So long as the rating isn't under 5, it's a good rating. And if it's under 5, it just means, it might not have been worth
quite as much,
what you paid for it.
And we very rarely have cigars that are that far down the scale.
But a few, but
this is a fun cigar. To me, it's like a candy bar. It's not a big. I'm going to sit down and think about this cigar for a long time.
Right,
cigar.
and really get into the complexities.
It's,
and
right,
all that,
but it's a great smoke, and just the whole sit down and the whole ceremony of it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I had a very kind of like a special occasion cigar this week that I wanted to mention, and it was a La Aroma de Cuba Noblesse Toro. This cigar is a thing of beauty. I mean, it's absolutely, not only the wrapper is beautiful and pristine on it, but it also had one of the nicest, most classic looking bands on it, and had a little ribbon around the foot. I mean, it was really, really nicely done. One of the most gorgeous cigars that I've smoked in a while. It was given to me as a Christmas gift by my stepson Aaron and his wife Jessie. So they went. I know exactly what they did. They went into one of the local tobacconist shops here and said, looking for something special, something that he'll like ooh and ah over, right? So they didn't steer him wrong, because only 3,000 boxes of this particular cigar were made, and it was just a thing of beauty. Ecuadorian Rosado wrapper, Nicaraguan binder and filler. It was made in the Don Pepin Garcia factory, so my expectations were pretty high.
Pretty high, right?
Yeah. Earth, spice, and dark chocolate on the pre-light, but once it was lit, I mean, this baby just took off. It was nutty at first, and then about a quarter to a half an inch in, boom, here comes the pepper. Kind of like you sort of expect.
Cuba is known for that big flavor.
And really, most of the stuff that Don Pepin Garcia is involved with has got some pepper to it. Once the pepper died down a bit, you could get some nuttiness. There were hints of tropical fruit, and really a surprising creaminess, given how powerful the cigar was turning out to be. You don't necessarily expect power and creaminess in the same cigar, but this stick had it. It was, I thought, the definition of the term flavor bomb. Like if you were to look that up in the dictionary, boom, that's what it is.
Picture of the Aroma de Cuba.
Full-bodied, but somehow creamy. It was really simply outstanding. So this is what a $15 cigar is supposed to burn and taste like. And, you're going to pay anywhere from 15 to probably 18 for this, depending, where you buy it. But if you think of it as a $15 cigar, price to quality, I'm going to give it a 5.5. And that's a big deal, because at $15, expectations are high. You know what I mean? Like, so to rate it anywhere higher than that, to say, yeah, I'd have been totally happy paying 18 or 19 with that. You know what I mean? And so that's how it goes. So I thought the cigar was great. I really did. And a lot of times I will say, when I have, those more expensive, those more than $10, $11 cigars, my response is often, well, that was good, but was it really that much better than an A.J. Fernandez Enclave, which is $8 or $9? Welcoming Leo Longoria from Spindletap Brewing. We're going to talk beer He's brought some things that are special to the tap room only, as well as some of their flagship brands. And we want to find out all about Spindletap and where the idea came from and what is. We'll also talk with him about the whole craft beer explosion and what's driving all of that. So it's all coming up. You're listening to Smokin' and Toastin', brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant in Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. We'll be right back.
Forgive me. That is what it says.
Welcome back, my friends. It's Smokin' and Toastin'. Show number 78. Drinking craft beer from the Spindletap. We are brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant, 1814 Washington Ave in Houston, and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. And it is our pleasure to introduce our special guest for the show, Mr. Leo Longoria from Spindletap Brewing. Leo, welcome.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me out today. I'm looking forward to sharing our beers with you.
Oh, that's awesome. Leo, what is your official title at Spindletap?
I am an account manager, or a fancy word for a sales rep.
So you're the guy then. A big part of your job must be going out and actually getting the product like onto shelves and into retail.
That's part of it,
right?
I visit breweries and not breweries, sorry, bars.
I visit a lot of breweries.
Yeah, I do that too. Bars, part of my job, I go to a lot of bars and restaurants and grocery stores and places that have the potential to carry our beer. We're very fortunate that people like what we make, and so a lot of our stuff, it's easy to find. H-E-B, Kroger, Specs, Whole Foods, Total Wine, all carry our products.
Have you noticed, is it difficult to get, a cool little corner bar or restaurant to give up tap space for something like that? Is that something that's a real challenge, or do you find people go, we don't have you guys yet, let's put you in,
It depends. It is getting more challenging, and I think it's a good thing. There's a lot of growth here in Houston in the craft beer scene. I think when we came online, there was maybe 20 or so places that made beer in the Houston area. Now we're getting upwards to 50. So it's making it really competitive. But the great thing is that there's a lot of great liquids out there, and for us, the consumers will kind of decide which are the ones that
you got to make good beer to keep up.
Yeah, but isn't it almost? This one of the things we've noticed seems very true in the craft beer community is that. Sure, everybody's competing. I'm only going to buy so much beer, and you want me to buy, yours instead of somebody else's. But at the end of the day, isn't there almost a sense that you help each other as well? And
absolutely,
there is a little bit of a sense of community among you guys?
And I think that's really there's more of that than there is a competitive nature. Yeah, we are competitors, but at the end of the day, we all feel like we're part of a family.
And part of a movement, even, towards good beer,
Definitely a movement. And I don't know if you guys have recently heard about this thing called the Daisy Chain a project. Basically, it was Southern Star Brewing out of Conroe. They came up with this idea to use a yeast and then share that yeast with other breweries here in Houston. And we're all making a different beer using
from the
yeast.
same yeast.
Nice.
Oh, that's cool.
That's fun.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we've noticed and sampled a number of them on the show from all over the country that brewery collaborations are becoming a big thing, where a brewery will get together with another brewery from the same town or somewhere else, and they will together craft a beer that then both breweries will sell. And that's a pretty cool idea too.
Absolutely, and we've done one, and we're working on another one right now. The one that we did was actually post Hurricane Harvey. There's a brewery in Louisiana called Parish Brewing Company, and we collaborated on a beer where all the proceeds went to the J.J. Watt Foundation for Hurricane Harvey relief.
Nice.
That was a lot of fun, and it was one of our best beers.
Wow, that's very cool. So, not to get off on a side thing, but when you brew a really great beer and it becomes one of your one of your limited availability beers, something like you just described. You said that was one of our best beers. Is it tough to see it go away? Why don't we have this in our ongoing portfolio? How does that work?
So for that particular beer, it was very tough because we basically agreed that we were only going to make it once because it was for a specific reason, and we just felt that for it to be special all the time, people will remember it, and You'll always have that memory, like this was a great beer for a great cause. Some of our other beers are still very popular. I brought some stuff that we'll share here later. We're known for our hazy IPAs, and those are extremely popular, and those are hard to find. The good thing, though, is that we'll continue to make them, even though, you know, when we make them, they usually sell out within a few days. So
That's a good
sometimes
thing, though.
minutes too.
That's
so.
crazy.
Wow, nice.
Especially in today's environment where there's so much choice for craft beer. I mean, even when I go downstairs to, you know, Phoenicia in my building, and I go down there, and they've got this little beer area, but it is packed with so many different choices and so many different kinds of beer, and it's like it's very well curated, but it's like for something to sell out like that quickly in this kind of environment where there's so much choice, that says a lot about what you got, you know?
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, we're very fortunate and really kind of humbled by the response that we've gotten from the community regarding those beers. So again, just we love making them, and we hope people will continue to enjoy them.
What, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you're here in Houston. You have a tap room.
We do. Our
Available?
tap room is located on the northeast side of town, off of 59 in Little York. The physical address is 10622 Hirsch Road. We've been there for a couple of years. We have a beautiful air-conditioned tap room with full view of the brewery once you're in the tap room.
Nice.
We normally have anywhere between 8 to 12 different beers on tap. It's family friendly. You can bring your kids. We do kid-based events throughout the year. One of my favorite ones is a gingerbread house party that we do during the holiday season. So again, just super friendly and welcoming. We're open Thursday through Sunday. You can go check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about events and stuff that we do at the brewery as well.
That's very
Awesome.
cool. That's very cool. Was the blonde your first beer? What was the first beer that Spindletap
The
released?
first two beers that we made were Boomtown Blonde, which we're about to sample here in a second, and Honey Hole ESB were our first two beers, and that was actually before I joined the brewery.
They were the first two I remember seeing,
Right,
you know,
right.
on shelves. But
I have tasted the Honey Hole ESP.
Yes.
I didn't remember that until you said that name.
yeah,
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
tasted that.
I like the idea of. Let's go ahead and do a little sampling of the
Yeah.
blonde here. So,
So this is Boomtown Blonde here. You'll see this on store shelves all over the city.
oh, nice.
And,
That
I
was,
love
gotta
that
get
sound.
that was
little
nice
sound
and
there,
juicy
right?
there. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do love our sound effects here on the show. So
Sound effects are good.
yeah, and those are the best because the other ones we have are kind of, you know, from the little red sound effects box, and they're not that interesting.
This is a pretty classic cream ale right here.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, I love just you know, the construction of the can, the way I say the construction, the design of the can, the way it's got the spindle tops on it, and there's information to read. I'm one of those people that likes to read about my beer while I drink
Right.
You're
it.
the same as
You
me.
know,
I love to
I
read
do.
stuff,
I love
yeah.
reading the stuff that they say and the, you know, the way they talk about how the beer was crafted and so on. And I
The
think
story.
yeah, the story
is
behind
always
the beer.
good.
So, so this was one of the first two, and it's a very sort of easy drinking, you know,
Fair-
sort of a blonde. I mean, you immediately get the honey and sort of spring and summer notes just on the first smell.
It's not overly hoppy either. It doesn't have
We used
so
to-
you're
much
right.
of that floral
It's
hop
got more of a cream ale
snap. You're
sort
going
of a
against
vibe
the
to it,
grain.
yeah.
Everyone makes everything so hoppy now.
Yeah, and this is definitely not one of those beers. We use a very mild German hop in this beer. That's not going to, just kill your palate.
Now, it's
we
got
want
a
this.
nice finish. It's a little crisp, but just leaves a little bit of flavor there too. That's nice.
Yeah,
I like
and it has a bit of a sweet, dry finish, and that's one of my favorite things about it. This beer for me is kind of like my lawn mowing beer, my post lawn
Right.
mowing beer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after I'm done working, just go pop one of these up, and it's just very light and very refreshing and easy to drink.
This is again one of the first ones, and you guys, you kind of the world is so IPA centric right now, and I love that. But it's interesting that you didn't start there. You started with an ESB and a blonde that went kind of in the other. I mean, ESB has some similarities, I guess, to IPA, but it seemed like you were going in a different direction.
What's
which
interesting
I thought
about
was, I
that,
thought was
too,
cool. You know,
Is that not a lot of companies make ESBs? As a matter of fact, the only ones I can think of locally are going to be yours and Eureka Heights.
Yeah.
Right. And-
Holler makes a really good ESP as
Do
well.
they? Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't had that.
and I think of like some of the national ones. Like I've always loved Red Hook CSB, which is very good, and Fuller, of course. The Fuller ESB is quite good. But yeah, that's an interesting.
For those of you who don't
interesting
know,
style.
ESB is extra special bitters.
Right. Extra special bitter, and it generally is a more bitter style of beer, but more in the way that a pale ale or an IPA is or can be bitter. And I do complain sometimes about IPAs that are too bitter, but ESB it has a different characteristic,
different
to
kind
it.
of bitter to
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
RSB, it is bitter, but it's very well balanced with the honey that we add to it.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and try that, because I want to contrast it with the Boomtown Blonde, and I love that you guys sort of went with the Spindletap theme and the whole Houston as the oil boomtown. People who are living in Houston now who weren't here back in the day may not remember. I mean, this was a wildcatter oil man's town.
Yep.
That's what put Houston on the map, and it was all the oil back in the really back in the 80s that drove the economic center of Houston, and really drove all the other businesses that sort of showed up and became a thing. And it's easy to forget that now that Houston is so diverse and stuff. But this was a wildcatter Spindletop town.
Well, even to this day, when I meet people that have just recently moved into Houston, I always ask, "Are you in computers
oil
or
and gas?
oil?"
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's one of the
Or
two.
do you work for NASA?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I've had this beer before, so I went right to it without doing the sampling on the nose. But the Honey Hole ESB, obviously there's some honey in this, but where did the name come from? Is it
So just to kind of backtrack a little bit as far as why we're called Spindletap. So the guys that own the brewery are also involved with other businesses that deal with oil and gas.
okay?
So
So they're
it was
oil and gas guys.
They're
Yeah.
oil and gas guys. So it was very easy to look at Spindletop over in Beaumont and say, hey, why don't we just change the O to an A and call it Spindletap?
Totally
Yeah.
worked. Totally worked.
So all the names, most
Plus
of
it
the
gives
names
you-
that we do have to do with the oil field or oil field terms. So like Boomtown, Honey Hole is like a rich oil find, right?
Right.
We also, you mentioned Wildcatter. In a minute, we'll have Wildcatter Double Wit.
Okay, so yeah.
So
That's
a lot of names
things that are all in
revolving-
keeping with the vibe and the style of the brand.
Yes.
And I was also going to mention the whole Spindletap vibe gives you a great visual for the taps that you put into the tap rooms and the bars and stuff. So.
Exactly. And when you come to our tap room, or even if you see us on tap around town, our tap is an actual oil derrick. So yeah.
Stands
Totally
out.
makes sense. Yeah, stands out. You're like, oh, they have Spindletap. Well, when is that? It's like
So this ESB has that super classic ESB bitter
oh,
finish.
I just love it. This is
Wonderful, and it has that interesting honey on the nose right up front, which is just something you don't expect when you think ESB. Of course, when you call it Honey Hole, you kind of expect it to have some kind of honey in it. But
I may like this even better than I like their IPA, which would be an interesting thing for me.
This would be a go-to for me.
Yeah, I like this. Although when we get to the IPA, I'll remember how much I like it, and I'll probably reverse that. but at the moment, I'm drinking this going, you know what? This ESB is just fantastic. This has got to be in refrigerator rotation. I mean, it really is good. And like Ian was saying, the honey sort of like just offsets the bitterness in just a really wonderfully balanced kind of way, and it makes this totally work as a very drinkable
There's kind
beer.
of a biscuity kind of, maybe almost a breadiness going on in there too.
That's something
about
I think
the middle of the flavor.
that ESBs may be more likely to have than IPAs. Maybe is that kind of a biscuity. I don't know.
It kind of
Could be
reminds
just me.
me of like
Like almost
it tastes like
sourdough or-
cereal or something
yeah,
like
okay,
that.
maybe that's what I'm looking for.
That's kind of the finish for me is always, it tastes like a bowl
Right.
of cereal or something.
So we're all searching for it, but I think we're going for the same
Well,
thing.
it's a very pleasant bowl of cereal. I would say. It's not, sometimes you think, I don't know how that would be in a beer. It's
ESB
good.
is not just for breakfast anymore.
good.
One of the
That's
things
absolutely
about our ESB that's a little off, that's not normal is, first of all, it has honey, but because of the honey, it has an added amount of sugar, so it clocks in at 7%. So it's a little bit.
It's a little bigger than most ESBs.
It is a little bigger than most ESBs. When folks come to the brewery, we say, if you're drinking Honey Hole, slow down a little bit
Right.
because
Yeah, you don't
these-
taste it.
No, you definitely
it's
don't.
easy drinking,
Yeah,
and
you definitely don't.
and before you know it, you're honey holed and you're calling Uber. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank God for Uber.
Right.
All right, so we do have, and I will take it easy on the honey hole because we do have more beers to taste here, and we're going to taste some Tequila Avion, the Reposado that is sitting here on the counter. We're excited about that. So it's going to be a fun episode, drinking craft beer from the Spindletap. We'll be right back at Smoking and Toasting.
Awesome. That's a really delightful beer.
Thanks, guys.
Really good.
We catch a little bit of flack for that. Some people say it's not true and true ESP because of the.
Welcome back. It is Smoking and Toasting. It's episode number 78. We are drinking craft beer from the Spindletap. Leo Longoria from Spindletap Brewing is joining us to talk beer today and talk all things Spindletap, and we appreciate that, and we will be doing more sampling, which is our favorite thing to do, actually, on the show. We love talking about beers and cigars and spirits, but we really love sampling them the best. Sampling is what it's all about. Johnny Walker is introducing a special edition Jane Walker, the Striding Man logo. You know, the Johnny Walker Striding Man with the cane and the whole.
The umbrella, I think it is a cane.
He has been on the Johnny Walker bottles for 200 years almost, but they are about to swap out their long-standing icon with a striding woman in a special edition, the Jane Walker edition of their Black Label Scotch whiskey. And I'm reading this from a report. I'm going to show this just on the camera here. I don't know how in focus that is, but
that's
there
pretty
is
classy.
There is the Jane Walker, which you can see, and it's very cool, actually.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
The question is it going to be the same Johnny Walker Black, or are they going to change it for this particular thing?
My understanding is that it's the same, and it is their first logo change in over a quarter of a century. So it's a pretty big deal.
Johnny Walker Gold, by the way,
yes,
is quite delicious.
I have not had
didn't
the
know there
Johnny
was a
Walker
Gold.
Gold.
Yeah, Johnny Walker Gold is quite delicious. Johnny Walker Black, it'll get you by.
Yeah,
And red is questionable at best.
yeah.
Make sure you mix the red.
Yes, make sure you mix the red. Yes.
But the gold is quite delicious and actually affordable, whereas the blue is quite delicious and not affordable at all.
By the way, I bring this up only because there was a link to it in the story that I printed out here. I don't have the full story, but apparently Aviation Gin has been purchased by the actor Ryan Reynolds. So I've never had Aviation Gin, so we'll have to try it on the show and talk about him. That'll be fun.
Gin is getting big these days.
Leo Longoria is joining us from Spindletap Brewing, and we are thrilled to have you on the show and to talk to Spindletap. And when did Spindletap open? What year did it open?
It was 2015.
So it's only been around for a few years.
A couple years. We just turned 2 back in December. We've been growing by leaps and bounds, and we're excited, just to be there.
I know you mentioned you weren't.
Does a company go through the terrible twos?
A company's happy to get to the twos.
I think that's where we are. We're definitely happy to get to the twos.
If you can get through the second year, you usually have a very good chance of being a successful company, or certainly the chances go way up.
Right.
So you mentioned, I know that you weren't there at the very beginning, but you mentioned that at the time that Spindletap opened, that there were already about 20, breweries in the greater Houston area.
Right.
Can you speak at all to what made these guys feel like, I know there's already 19 or 20, but here's why we want to do this anyway, and here's what we feel like we have to add to the mosaic of beer making that's going on in this area?
Well, these guys they're entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And I think first of all, they saw an opportunity for something that was fun, and it's something that they love too. I mean, they've been craft beer drinkers for years, and just with that alone, and with the new building that they built out there that houses the other businesses that they own, they're like, hey, what if we put a brewery in here as well, and we could invite all our friends and clients and just hang out and have a good time. And honestly, it was just kind of that at first.
To me, that's almost the best reason.
Right. Right.
It really is. It's like, let's do this because we just kind of want to.
That's
for
how
fun.
the show started.
Well, it absolutely was. It was like, I know there's other shows out there that talk about these things. In fact, one of the reasons that this show deals with craft beer and distilled spirits and hand-rolled cigars is because we like all three of those things.
Because they're delicious.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
We really like all three of those things. We like talking about them. So so it's really a big part of it. But I think that if you have a real passion for something and you want to share that, I think that can be a good enough reason, rather than market research and here's our niche in the market. I understand why all those things, and as a businessman, you understand why those things are important. But I think maybe what's most important is, having a passion for what you do and letting other people find that passion in the quality of your products.
So, question, the owners, are they brewers themselves, or did they have a concept and then
go out and find the people to brew?
The main owners are not brewers, but two of our brewers are part owners of the company.
Okay.
The
That's
head
cool.
brewer and the original head brewer are both part owners of the company. And you said earlier about passion, and for me, that's what attracted me to want to work at Spindletap, is that I saw that they had the passion for the craft and to make fantastic beers. And then once I started drinking them, I was like, man, these guys are...
You really kind of got it together.
They really do have something going on
they got
there.
something going on there. So I was very fortunate to know some of the owners before I started there, and I'm very fortunate that they decided to bring me onto the company. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What are we tasting next?
Okay, so up next, this is something that's only available in the tap room.
This is an unlabeled bottle, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited.
This is
Ooh,
called...
that was awesome.
Oh my God, that may be one of the best sound effects we've ever had on the show. That was so good.
Brilliant.
This is
Wow.
this is one of my favorites, actually. This is called Wildcatter Wit. It's a double Belgian wit that we add agave and tamarind to.
Oh wow!
And we've made this for a couple years already.
Double
and
Belgian wit.
yes.
And wit beer is just the German style of beer, correct?
Correct.
Is there a meaning to wit beer other than just German style?
It's a
Or
wheat.
is
It's a wheat beer.
Oh, which is what the wit actually means,
yes.
right? Yes.
Yeah.
So when I think that, I expect banana
Because of the wheat,
and,
right?
and kind of the overripe flavors like that.
Mhm.
There's a certain kind of it's a weird word. I use overripe, but kind of a rot kind of flavor, but in a good way.
Yes, I understand what you're
Overripeness.
getting at.
Those
Well,
are the esoteric notes that you get from the combination of the grain and the yeast and hops. So,
and boy, you can
yeah.
get that right on the first sort of whiff of this
Yeah.
beer. You pull out that banana and that very ripened fruit,
Yep.
sort of a vibe to it. Now I saw you swirling it like a wine connoisseur does. Does that help open up the flavors in the
it
beer?
does.
Like this?
It helps, and it helps with the aroma. So if you kind of swirl it, you'll create a little bit of turbulence in the liquid, and
Yeah,
just
you
kinda
get a little
loves
more,
that,
little more
you
foam.
know.
What's interesting about this too that
Oh,
I
that's
didn't
so good.
expect is the mouthfeel is real big on this.
Mhm.
Like it's bigger than you'd expect, especially looking at the color, that kind of medium straw color that you have going on there, and it doesn't have a ton of head on it or anything like that. So there's nothing indicating that this would be such a full mouthfeel kind of experience.
I will tell you that the wheat beers are not in my sort of short list of favorite styles, but there is something so delicious about this that this could definitely be like a regular rotation beer for me. This is really got a smoothness and a sort of there's something about wheat beers in general that there's a little bit of that sort of grainy aftertaste that just isn't to my palate's liking.
Just about to actually say this has a hop finish on it that you don't
Yes.
expect on a wheat
That
beer.
you
at
don't
all.
expect on a wheat beer. So you get that sort of the banana ripened fruit thing up front, and then you get this hop sort of even just a little bit of citra on the finish, and it's wonderful. It's really, really good.
Yeah, this has an interesting balance to it too,
Mhm.
because you get all those classic wit beer flavors right up front. Then it finishes almost like a lighter IPA, but you have this big mouthfeel the whole
So I
time.
don't think I could be a brewmaster because even if I knew like what to do, in other words, if I knew the craft and had skill at doing it, I would always want to craft things toward my taste. Like it would be hard for me to get like this is exactly the kind of wheat beer I would craft. If I were a brewmaster. But I realize that sometimes you don't want to craft to your taste. You want to craft to the taste of the people who really love that particular style of beer. And so, but yes, if I were a brewmaster, this is what I'd make my wheat beer taste like for sure.
This finish is so different from most wit beers that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
right. And I think the addition of the agave and tamarind definitely adds to that. And for this batch, I believe we add a little bit more tamarind, so it has it feels like it finishes a lot drier than previous batches.
Is this something available only at the brewery?
So I misspoke earlier. This is not tap room only, and I do apologize for that. We are releasing this to go into bars and restaurants across the city.
So it's coming out
It's
for
coming
retail.
out. It should be available here in the next few weeks.
So it's coming out for taps. Will it come out for bottles and cans?
No cans this
No
time.
cans. Okay.
But there are future plans to put some of our taproom only stuff or draft stuff into cans in the future.
I can see
going into
this.
bars and restaurants is a good first step, though. You know.
Absolutely.
Well, I could
Yeah.
see this though in particular. While standalone, it's a nice beer. I bet this goes really, really well with food in general.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Like
I think
I
so.
picture this with hot wings right now because
Oh,
this would
dude.
cut the hot
Yes.
wing
Yes.
spice
Man.
so well.
Yeah.
You know, and I bet it would even stand up with it because it has that crisp hop finish on it.
How
But I'm
much of-
willing to bet that goes.
How much of this did you bring with you, and what are you doing after the show?
Unfortunately, I only brought one bottle and it's
Okay,
all
well,
gone.
it's all
Sorry
gone.
about that. Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, this is really good. So will this just be called when this shows up at my favorite local brewery? Will it just be Spindletap wood beer? What will I be looking for?
It'll be called Wildcat or Wit.
Wildcatter. Okay.
Wildcatter,
Wildcatter
that's
Wit.
right.
Yeah, I love the name, and again, all the stuff in keeping with the theme and the vibe of Spindletap. It's very cool, very cool. I want to say, what did I taste when because you guys were in my Specs downtown off of Smith Street. I don't know, a few weekends back, and I was in there shopping, and you were sampling a couple of things that were just so good. But I don't think it wouldn't have been this, would it?
No.
No.
So it likely would have been Boomtown, Honey Hole,
Yes.
and Hop Gusher, and the possibility of Houston Haze being there during that time was
Okay.
also a possibility, which is one of our New England style IPAs.
Okay, so we're going to get to another. We're definitely not moving quickly enough through the beers, so we will try doing that when we come back. And
That's not usually a problem.
no,
for
it's
us
not
either. That's
usually a
very
problem,
bizarre.
but we're enjoying these so much. We're staying with them and talking about them. So we also will be tasting some Tequila Avion, and I'll be talking about how this got major HBO promotion, which I wonder what Tequila Avion paid for that, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that coming up. You're listening to Smoking and Toasting, and we are drinking craft beer from the Spindletap. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It is Smoking and Toasting. We're very Houston-centric today. You know, we're from Houston. We make no bones about that. The show is heard everywhere, but we are from Houston, and not only are we drinking a Houston-proud local beer here today, but those are the suffers who are all about being from Houston, and they're just awesome. So, love those
I ended up
guys.
going down the YouTube hole the other day with the Suffers.
Oh, have you seen their like Audio Tree Live stuff and the Tiny Desk concert? That's so good.
Have you seen the one in the van?
Yes, awesome,
Oh, man, I'm
awesome.
missing out.
I love them. Oh, they're great. The Suffers, SUFFERS.
Have you not YouTube surfed and gotten caught in that
Oh,
vortex?
Actually, no, I'm not a really big YouTube guy,
Oh,
unfortunately.
man. It can be a rabbit hole. Let me
Yeah.
just
So,
tell you.
so let me tell you what YouTube does. You watch something and it says, "Oh, well, if you like that, here's a bunch of other stuff."
Yes,
So
yes.
you keep watching this, and you look over here like, "Oh, I want to see that."
Oh yeah.
The next thing you know, you're like 6 hours has gone by. You're like,
Yes.
"What's happening?"
I think like the only videos I get suggested are like cats and cucumber videos. Yeah.
Well, again, it is all about your search history, so that tells you what you need to know. Man, so it's really enjoying this show. Leo Longoria from Spindletap is our guest. Thank you for coming on the show and for bringing
you.
such awesome beers. These are really, really good. Ian, if I may say, as I meant to mention this at the top of the show, I mean, you are styling today. You're sporting the sport jacket and just looking sharp.
I'm thinking I'm going to take my girl out for a nice dinner this
Oh,
evening.
nice.
Right?
Nice.
I think both of us were sick through Valentine's Day.
So you didn't get to do the
And
Valentine's thing.
we never really quite got to it, so I think we're going to do that this evening. And also, this shirt.
Well, I
Put
was
it up
going to
here
say,
so you can
I
see it.
love that shirt. Can we get a shot of that on the yeah?
This is, I promise
Absolutely.
you're going to see me wearing this
Well,
shirt on a
I was just
going to
suggest you should totally wear that
You're
shirt
gonna see
again
it.
because it's so worth it.
I'll try to put it on about a month rotation, though.
That'll work
So-
perfectly for me. So,
But yeah, so this was a belated Valentine's present, and I thought, you know what, that shirt's the right color
Yep.
to go with this awesome jacket.
so we're drinking Spindletap beers today, but before we go any further with the Spindletap,
There you go.
That wasn't bad. It wasn't like the pop we got off that
That pop was
Spindletap, which is like the
brilliant.
greatest one ever. But this is Tequila Avion. So while I pour this, anyone who watched Entourage will remember Tequila Avion. Entourage was the show that came on HBO about the guy who makes it in Hollywood and becomes the big movie star, and his entourage of friends from New York and New Jersey all go out there with him, and they hang out and try to adjust to Hollywood life, and it's got it's full of cameos, and Jeremy Piven was sort of really, his career was sort of made by that show because of the great role that he plays as the manager and agent
Right.
for the boys. But anyway, one of the guys in the entourage, Turtle, becomes a part investor in the show in Tequila Avion, and supposedly he's dating the daughter of the guy that makes the tequila or whatever, and Mark Cuban gets involved, and it's its whole thing. I won't give the whole thing away, but the point is, Avion gets mentioned like 150 times on the show Entourage, and I just thought it was very interesting, and it certainly almost has to be considered product placement. I'm sure Avion
Yeah.
paid for that, but it's just interesting.
I'm sure they benefited from it.
Well,
That's for sure.
there's no question they benefit, because I would never have necessarily heard their name. Maybe I would have, but the point is, I heard their name because of the show and heard it quite a bit. And of course, it made me think, well, I got to try some of this tequila. So I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to try it here today. So it's a very interesting. Now, this is the Reposado, and it is available pretty widespread. I mean, it's out of New York, but available pretty much all over the country. One of the things that I appreciate that they did was, when they got their exposure, they made sure that it was everywhere that you could find it.
Yes.
And certainly you can do that. So
That one, however,
yes,
is particularly selected for Fiesta food stores.
Oh, so I wonder if this is it's the Avion Reposado, which I'm sure you can find that just about anywhere. But I'm wondering
So I think
what
that was a
means
barrel
by
selection.
Oh, maybe so. Okay.
That's why it's numbered like that. And
Numbered,
this
and
was.
it is bottle 107 from barrel 41. This particular one.
If you could follow my wife around for a day, you'd find that she's just an adventurous little soul.
Well, your wife is awesome.
She's
first of
so
all.
funny. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like following a butterfly. It's all over the place, but definitely is going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they opened a Fiesta Beverage Mart by the house, which is basically a Fiesta food store's liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
And she went in there, and I guess she decided she wanted tequila, and she just started talking to one of the guys there and said, "What do you suggest?"
Mm-hmm.
And this bottle, I believe, was about $37. My initial take on it was maybe not $37 worth. But after I tried it again, I thought, it's a pretty good tequila overall.
Well, I'm just going to interrupt you right there. Totally worth the 37.
You think it's
Totally. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've just taken one sip, but what I'm going to tell you is that this has all of the things that my very favorite tequilas have. It's got, and I know it's a Reposado, so it wasn't aged as long as, say, an Añejo, but this competes with some Añejos that I've had in terms of the notes of vanilla and the sort of the oak, conditioning.
Yeah, the oak conditioning
and stuff.
you can definitely taste
you
on
can
it.
pull that out, and to me, I mean, I love the taste of just that sort of straight agave taste that some great, Blanco and Reposado tequilas have. But my favorite is this, and
This
this
doesn't
kind
have the agave slap right up front. And I think that's why my initial taste on this, I was like, I don't know, because I was expecting that initial agave slap.
it's pretty smooth.
This is a little smoother, but it also has this little heat that comes back at the end.
Right, towards the
and
end
circles around
and
a little bit.
circles
It's
back
interesting.
around. Yes. Well, I will tell you, right now at this moment as we speak, I'm a little spoiled with tequila because my wife and I were out to dinner and we were totally splurging, and I wound up getting some Jose Cuervo La Familia, de la Familia, which is probably my favorite tequila I've ever had in the world. And then, like 2 weeks later, it was Valentine's Day. We were out for Valentine's Day, and we were at Tango and Malbec, and they had it as well. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go there again. So I've had that twice in the last,
And that is
month
not
and a half.
inexpensive.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And so to be praising this after that memory is so recent, for me is a pretty big deal. But I think that the Tequila Avion Reposado. I think it's quite good. Leo, are you a tequila guy?
Not necessarily. My neighbor shares some really good tequilas with me, and I can never remember the names. But I've had some really good ones, and this one stands out. I need to tell my neighbor about this one because I think he'll enjoy it. You mentioned the oak.
Right.
I really get a lot of oak
And
in
there's
the
a
middle.
astringency to it, yeah.
Yeah, you really do. You really do.
So
Now-
this is not worthy of salt and lime. Or
no.
No training wheels.
No training wheels on this one, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
If you're
good
doing
sipping tequila.
if
for
you're
sure.
doing salt and lime with your tequila, you definitely need to upgrade your tequila. It's definitely the thing. So, so I don't want to cut from one thing to the other too quickly, but just in the interest of time, do you have any of the beers that you're bringing that might be a good matchup with this?
Oh, gosh. I know we've talked about doing some barrel aging, and we do have a small barrel aged program at the brewery. We haven't done tequilas yet. We've done a Chardonnay aged, the Wildcatter Wit we just had. We've done that beer in a Chardonnay barrel.
Is it a different version of it that's in, or is that part of?
It's
what you-
slightly different, slightly
Interesting.
different version. Not too different though. But we've never done tequila, and there's a few beers that I've had that they're aged in tequila. Not a huge fan, but
Yeah, beers and tequila don't always go together for aging as much as they sometimes will to drink one and then the other.
I want to challenge you.
You challenging me?
And unfortunately, I don't think there's any left, but I bet that wit beer and this tequila will be brilliant together.
I bet they would.
Man.
You have any left in your glass?
I got about that much.
I bet those two.
Let's try it. It's enough to try a taste. If we just
I bet those two would work together flavor-wise.
Oh yes, they do. Now here's what happens. That's very interesting. Is if you do the tequila first, and I just did a very small sip, the wit beer becomes much sweeter.
Yeah.
Than it tasted before.
Right.
But not in a bad way. It's in a way that makes it very drinkable. That's wow.
Yeah.
And you pick up on the banana like really off the top. Ian, you're a smart dude.
I think about things sometimes.
I think it's the shirt.
Sometimes I use the noggin.
Sometimes
it's the jacket.
Sometimes I sits and thinks.
I know. All I need now
Yeah.
is patches on the elbows.
Yeah. Sometimes I sits and thinks, and sometimes I just sits. But enough about me. Okay, look.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah. What should we try next? Spindletap. Where
Up
are we
next,
headed
we're gonna go into IPAs. This is our year-round IPA called Hop Gusher, available in stores across the city.
So
And
we've had
look at me,
we've had a Boomtown, we've had a Honey Hole, we've had a Wildcatter, and now a Gusher.
So Hop Gusher is our West Coast IPA, 6.5% ABV. The hops we use in this are Mosaic,
And
Citra, and
yeah.
Amarillo hops. Very fruit-forward IPA. So you're going to get that nice bitterness that you would expect from an IPA.
Ooh, it smells
but
very
it's not
IPA.
very pronounced. And yes, you mentioned the smell. The aroma on this beer is one of my favorite things. I
And
love
this
pulling it
smells
out
like
of
a
our
flower garden.
I love pouring a sample from one of our bright tanks because it's super fresh and the aroma is just very prevalent. And on the flavor, you'll get grapefruit and you'll maybe even get a little bit of pineapple and mango, maybe some melon. I've had some people say they pick up guava. I never taste guava, but yeah.
It's pretty outstanding. Like I'm the sort of resident IPA guy. That's really spectacular. It's very citrus and tropical fruit forward. And then I'm trying to describe the finish
I
here. What do you
expected
get on
from
the
the
finish?
well, I expected. Let me just tell you this. I expected from the initial nose on this for it to be way more hop forward than it is. This is
It's almost
way
citrus
more balanced,
and yeah.
and it actually has a bit of a malt profile that I was not expecting at all. And so on the end of that, what I'm tasting is a little of that malt sweetness. And again, we're back to that kind of sweet bread. Not banana bread because it's not real banana-like, but sweet bread kind of flavors on the very end that just finish this. And it's got a crisp hopness to it, but it's kind of in the middle of the flavor where you don't expect it. It's a little strange, but quite enjoyable.
Have you? What is the best seller in your line?
It kind of it kind of fluctuates for us. Honey Hole and Hop Gusher kind of go
The two
back
of
and
them,
forth. Yeah.
One of the reasons I asked is I was wondering, I know how popular IPAs are right now, but I was wondering, does that help or hurt? Like, in other words, does it help because if somebody's going to try one of your beers, that's maybe what they go to, or does it hurt because there's so many other IPAs to choose from, and so people may already have a favorite and not give yours a try?
Well, one of the great things about the craft beer movement is that the majority of the drinkers are what I call promiscuous drinkers. They're not faithful
great way to put
to
it.
a certain brand or style.
Ian,
they want to try
I'm looking at you.
everything, right? And so, for us, I mean, just to get the opportunity to get our beers in front of those drinkers and for them to enjoy it, and even though it might not be their favorite style or brand, they'll still come back to it and say, hey, you know what? This Hop Gusher, I really liked it. I'm going to try it again. And buy a 6-pack or 2 or
I
whatever.
tell
So,
you,
yeah.
and I'm probably a little different from Cruz on this because I'm not as big of an I like IPAs when they're really well done. This is an IPA I would keep coming back to.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of IPAs are just so bitter and hop forward that I like to liken to basically just chewing on a pine cone at some point.
And there's
It's not
nothing
like
wrong
that.
with
It's
that, to
not
be
like that.
honest. I
Well,
mean,
if
I
that's
enjoy
what you
those beers
like,
as well.
You know, if that's what
yeah.
you like. But this has more complexity to it and makes me quite happy to be drinking an IPA. There's another brewery in Shannon, Texas. Shannon Brewery.
I think Shannon Brewing, yeah.
They have a brilliant IPA, and this reminds me a lot of that because it's got a balance to it. It's not just let's smack you around with hops and leave you there.
So
It's really nice.
So to walk back to something that we said a minute ago, from a marketing standpoint, does your challenge become not so much to get people to try your beer for a particular beer that you release, but maybe to be something that they wind up coming back to? Is that, like, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you know what I mean? Like where is the real challenge? Because you were saying, and it's true, in craft beer, man, people love to try everything. It's like, oh, I haven't tried Spindletap IPA, I'll try that.
Promiscuity.
Right. But how do getting them to come back must be the bigger challenge, given what's out there and the fact that there's, 45 new IPAs they haven't tried yet.
Right. Right. I think for most drinkers, they'll have their favorites, but they're still going to want to try. So somebody will go to a store and say, you know what, I'm going to go get me a Hop Gusher, and oh, hey, look, there's a new IPA from St. Arnold or somebody like that. I'm going to take that and try it. Right, and so it becomes almost part of like a rotation,
Right.
for customers.
So you're saying getting in the rotation, maybe that's
I think that's kind of
the challenge.
where we want to be at. And there are drinkers that are super faithful to a certain brand and that's all they drink, but those are few and far between.
Yes.
I want to come back to the beer for a second too. Maybe I'm just hungry, but this makes me want cheese and crackers. I'm willing to
It is
bet.
kind of a cheese and cracker.
Yeah, I'm
thing.
willing to bet that
I've
would
had
be
this
just
with
like,
brie, and it's actually pretty good with
Yeah,
with
okay,
brie.
so I'm not
Yeah,
alone on
yeah,
that, but I'm thinking like water crackers and a sharp cheddar would be.
Which sends me back to
yeah.
an earlier question, Leo. How much of this did you bring, and what are you doing after the show?
Did you bring cheese and crackers?
Unfortunately, I did not. I
We
should
will,
have.
We will take
Yeah.
a break to try and see if there's any in the kitchen, and we will be back. You're listening to Smoking and Toasting. It's craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. We're going to try just a couple more Spindletap brews in our final segment.
That's a blast. Yeah, that really makes me think cheese and crackers.
On the beach in Hawaii.
Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, show number 78, drinking craft beer from the Spindletap. I feel the need after our last segment to go back and really clarify something, because as the guy who usually speaks the most on the show about IPAs, I don't think I was as clear as I would like to be about the Spindletap Hop Gusher IPA. It's freaking delicious. That's what I can do. I mean, this really is a very good and well-balanced IPA. And Ian, I know that you said that, but I thought if I talk about barley wine, people go, yeah, that's interesting. But if you talk about a barley wine, people take you very seriously. So, with any luck, I'm that representation for the show for IPAs.
It's quite good.
And I wanted to say, if I was anything less than enthusiastic, let me correct that right now. This is great. I mean, and I think it was enthusiastic, but I was busy drinking. So anyway, it's quite good. And
We forgive you.
So the Hop Gusher is your year-round IPA.
Yes.
And then I also was a huge fan of the ESB, and now you're going to blow our minds.
I just want to say before you open that, I'm so happy that you're bringing out good beers because it's really awkward when a beer sucks.
Yes. And we're and sometimes
We've only actually
I
had
get
that
that,
once,
yeah.
and that was and I think it was intentional. That was from the Yellow Rose.
Oh, he brought something that he goes,
brought
this
one of
isn't
his-
very
"It's
good,
not
but
very
I brought
good."
a few guys
And we were
anyway.
both like,
And Yellow Rose makes some of the greatest
Oh,
beer.
yeah.
I mean, those guys know what they are
Yeah.
doing.
It was a pretty funny moment, but like because we both took a sip, and I was like,
Yeah, he goes, I didn't think you would like this one, or something like that.
but he totally brought a
it was-
a bomb.
Yeah, it was just such a great moment on the show because he didn't give us any advance,
Nope.
warning of any kind. It was like, okay.
Kudos to him, by the
Yeah.
way.
And I'm there going, well, there's things I like about it, but yes. But
It's
no,
good to be honest.
Yeah, it's good to
I
be
really
honest, yes,
believe
yeah.
that. Absolutely.
Well,
It's good
tell-
good for them to share something like that.
Tell
too.
us what it is that you're bringing us next.
So-
I have a feeling you're going to
Okay,
blow our minds.
I want to also just say I love this can.
All
Like
right,
this,
can we show this
was
to
not
the-
on the
to the
official show.
camera?
You might have
We
heard in
yeah.
between, but
Yeah.
this can is awesome.
Yeah, we won't go into what you were saying off the air. That'll be just for Facebook Live.
Off
but,
on the air.
But if it looks
Right.
quasi familiar,
If it
you
looks
might be
familiar,
right.
there may be a
beautiful.
reason behind
there
that.
might be a reason. Would there be a reason behind the 34 on the back?
Apparently there was a really great pitcher back in the day that wore this
okay.
that wore this
There you
number.
go. There
It's
you
a
go.
bit of it's an iconic
Just
Houston
asking.
number.
Just asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's three famous athletes that wore that jersey
Yeah.
or wore that number, and I think we're all familiar
I
with
think
those
we're all
guys.
familiar with who that might be. Okay, gotcha.
But this
you,
is
you do
this,
very well with the answer to that question. By the way. I just wanted to
Thank
say
you.
That was very expertly handled.
Thank you. So what we have next, this is called Houston. This is one of our Northeast or New England style IPAs.
So this is the hazy IPA.
This is a
style,
hazy
right?
IPA. This is called Houston. And here, let me pop this open.
Oh,
here
yeah,
real
that's good.
quick.
It was a good fast one and a good pop. While you're pouring this, let me ask you, what do you think of the hazy IPA trend? I mean, it was obviously was the thing that everybody made, headlines about in the beer industry last year. Everybody was talking about hazy IPAs or New England IPAs or whatever it was that you wanted to call them. What's your take on the whole style?
So from a personal level, my first hazy IPA, and I didn't even know I was drinking a hazy
Smells like
IPA,
oranges.
was from Parish Brewing Company, Ghost in the Machine. Loved it. I was like, man,
Have we had
this is
that?
incredible.
I don't believe we
Right.
have. I don't believe we have. Wow, where's Parish Brewing out
So
of?
they
That's out of
Wait,
Louisiana, like
they're in
New Orleans,
Louisiana.
right?
Did Chris and you have that?
Yes.
You did. It was frozen.
Yes, it was the one that was frozen
was
that he brought,
frozen, yes.
and it was still. We waited for it to thaw, and it was still good. That's how good it was. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it has
It
a
was,
skull with like a bunch of hops coming out of it.
Yeah. Oh no, that was spectacular. In fact, I was so mad at Chris Hart. Chris, if you're with us,
Chris,
you really
we're talking
kind of
to
ticked
you.
me off on that show because you brought me something wonderful that I can't get.
So yeah, that's a brewery in Louisiana. I can't remember the name of the town, but I know it's heading towards Baton Rouge. So not a long drive from Houston.
I will remind everyone of what Chris said on the show. He goes, "I have friends who can get this for you."
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you how many bottles of it or cans of it have shown up at my house. 0.
We're gonna have
Chris
to track
may-
him down on that.
Chris may have friends, but they.
I
have
want
not
to talk
helped
about.
so far.
Let's get away from that for a second. I want to talk about this. This is delicious.
You're loving this. Is like an orange juice beer,
Right.
Of sorts.
Does have a very orange juice like quality when you look at it. Very different from like the IPA we had earlier, Hobgusher.
Hold that up again. Why do we call it hazy?
Yeah, you can't see through that thing. I'll tell you. Very different, not only in look but also in flavor, aroma. A lot more citrus forward flavors, even
No kidding.
more so than Hobgusher. The other thing that I really like about this style of beer is the mouthfeel. Has a much creamier
Creamy, yeah, very
mouthfeel.
creamy.
Over
More like an
a-
orange juice, really, in terms
yeah,
of the mouthfeel.
Yeah. And there's things that we do that create that mouthfeel. A few trade secrets that I don't know, how the exact thing that we do to make these beers, but I know that people here in Houston love these beers, and we enjoy making them. And we normally have, long lines of people waiting to buy these beers. And
Is
it's
this what you were talking about that often sells out as soon as it
sells
gets in
out?
the store?
And we try and do a monthly hazy beer release. This last month we made 2 beers. One was called Heavy Hands, and the newest one was called Cosmic Clouds. And we do pre-sale tickets that you can buy online on Eventbrite.
It's crazy.
And
People
this
are buying
last
pre-sale tickets to get, but they are.
yeah, and this last time it was crazy because the tickets actually sold out in less than a minute,
Huh.
and we were just like, oh my gosh, like how does this happen?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I want to point out on this too. Your other IPA did the same thing. The big hop profile's in the middle of the flavor on this. I don't know that I've experienced that really
So-
with IPAs. How does it not finish with the big hop
With the big
finish like
bitter
you
hop
expect?
thing.
We don't use a lot of bittering hops in the boil, which is where bitterness usually comes from. We do a lot of what's called dry hopping, which is occurs either a little bit during fermentation and then after fermentation, and we add a lot of hops that add to the aroma and the flavor of the beer. And that's one of the things that really sets this style apart from other IPAs.
So let me ask you a question about like marketing and supply. Is it a smarter play for Spindletap as a brewery that's, doing what all the other guys are, which is trying to differentiate yourself from all the other, breweries that are out there? Is it a smarter play to do these hazy IPAs, let them sell out the way they are, and let it become a thing?
Well, it keeps it special, I think.
Right, keeping it special. Or would it be a smarter play to make more, make there more to be there to, serve the demand? Like how do you choose which path to go?
Well, we kind of want to do both paths. And so our first hazy IPA, which is coming up at a year anniversary, was Houston Haze, which released last March. And we did that beer for the first few months just out of the brewery. You could only buy it at the brewery. Late last year, we started putting that beer in stores. And even in the stores, it was selling out, within days. So honestly, for us, it's like, yeah, we can make more, but the demand is already there for not only, for more product on shelves, but for product that we make at the brewery. And we're actually adding capacity at the brewery as well, more fermenters, more bright tanks, so that we can increase production. But honestly, we feel like it's still not going to be enough to where we can say we have flooded the market, and you can just anytime you want to, you can go to the store and buy one of these products.
And this one again is
This is Houston.
Houston.
Yes, sir.
Wow. And it's a double IPA. I didn't
It's a
realize
double
that.
IPA, so it
Actually-
clocks in at about 8.5%. But
Okay.
it definitely doesn't drink like that.
No,
No, it didn't drink like a double at all.
I can't believe, like you mentioned earlier, how creamy the mouthfeel is on it. It's just such a nice, delightful
It really
thing.
is like, from a mouthfeel standpoint, it's like it's orange juice, but then it has the hops and the sort of
This
beer
might
vibe to it.
surprise you. When I buy orange juice, I buy it with a high pulp.
Yeah.
See, I'm the same guy. I like the pulp. I
Me
do.
too.
I
and
do.
we normally have to buy 2 things of orange juice for the house because I'm the only guy that
You're the
likes
only
the
one that
pulp
likes
at
the
the
pulp.
house.
I like the pulp. I like eating oranges.
This-
I just don't like peeling them. So the orange juice with lots of pulp is the closest I can get to eating an orange.
There you
without
go.
This
having
is
to peel it.
somewhere between that classic kind of grapefruit citrus that you get, but more orange, bitter to it.
Yeah, Leo, this is
pretty
delicious.
outstanding.
Thank
This
you.
is like really
one
spectacular.
of the other things I get from this beer is stone fruit. A little bit of like that stone fruit kind of finish on the end.
That's the one that if you cut it the wrong way, it'll kill you. No, wait, no, that's different. I'm sorry, I have that confused with
Not
something else.
pufferfish.
Not pufferfish, yes. So I want to leave ourselves time because you mentioned an imperial stout.
Yes, and so just a quick backstory on this next beer. This is called aceite crudo. It's a Spanish word
So,
for
say that again.
aceite crudo.
Aceite crudo.
Spanish word for crude oil, and
Whoa,
kind of
another good. And that was off mic too.
that was off mic. Yeah.
Wow, impressive.
So a quick backstory on this one. and another word for crudo, it means being hung over in Spanish.
Oh,
So this is
in
definitely
addition
one.
to crudo, like crude oil, right?
I like the double entendre thing. You
Well,
got
and
going.
I'm
double
looking at
entendre
this.
on that one.
Ian, this has your name written all over it because this looks like a cup of motor oil. It does.
So clocks
If you
in at
just put
about
some
11%.
chunks- If you put some chunks in it, I'd be happier.
Oh my God! Ian brought this beer one time. I know I talk about this. It seems like every week. He actually brought a beer that had chunks in it. It was
It
chewy.
actually, yeah.
I was like, "What are you
Uh-oh.
doing to me?" Yeah, I'm with you on some of these
It
imperial
was one of
stouts.
the
but-
harvest ales. I think it was like
Oh.
a 2012 harvest ale.
Oh,
and
yeah,
apparently
yeah.
they
So
harvested.
you know exactly what I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about.
Apparently
Oh,
they
yeah.
harvested some big chunks of pumpkin or something because they were in the beer. They were in the beer.
You call that unfiltered.
That
right,
is it.
right, yeah.
This beer is chewy on its own without chunks.
Now
This-
that I don't mind, as long as it didn't have real chunks. I don't mind the viscosity. I just
This beer
boy,
will,
this has a
will
wonderful
stain
nose.
anything it touches.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It is very much like motor oil,
Mm.
and it's delicious.
Wow.
It's so chocolatey and so vanilla. Like the chocolate and vanilla on it are just so huge.
If loving motor oil is wrong, I don't want to be right.
And what's funny is this reminds me of what's the Conroe Brewery does that
Black crack
Silver,
from Silver
Black
Star.
Crack,
yeah.
right?
Black
Yeah.
Crack from Silver Star. Yes.
Yes, and it's very much like that. It's huge. It's big and round.
Well,
and
we
it's-
just had that on the show last week.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And this is, you're right, this is similar, but this one tastes a little more like a candy bar than that did. It's got a little more of that just sort
This
of
is more sweet, less oak.
chocolate. Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Although it does have a little astringency on the finish on it.
It is delicious, though.
It sticks to the side of my glass.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are all things I actually love about it. That,
You
that
mean
might
that-
sound
I was gonna
negative,
say,
but
you
it's
mean that in
wonderful.
a very
No, not at
positive
all.
way, don't you? Wow. Well, this is good. Now, I know we poured this one out of one of these custom bottles. So, is this a tap room only?
It was, and again, just like Wildcat or Wit, it will be available in tap room or bars and
In
restaurants.
bars and restaurants, not at retail.
Not
in a
retail.
Can, but,
No, not yet.
Over vanilla ice cream.
oh my God!
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
imagine?
Or with a brownie.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God!
Yeah.
Like this is like dessert. You said earlier it's like taking a sip of dessert. We were talking about a beer, and this is very
Leo,
much
will
like
you
that.
guys think at some point about taking these special brews that are like what we've just tried here, and like the wit beer, and in addition to making them available at bars, maybe putting them in bombers and releasing like a limited amount of them?
That's something that has been discussed. We're not quite ready to do that just yet, but I think in the future you will see releases, especially of Aceite Crudo and Wildcat or Wit. These are two of our favorite beers that we do out of the
I will
brewery
say, if one of these falls off the truck, I have a refrigerator space for it.
Yes, exactly.
we might find a way to make it fall right into your refrigerator.
Leo Longoria from Spindletap Brewing. Leo, thank you so much for introducing us to some of this. Really, I mean, honestly, there hasn't been anything here that we didn't give
No,
it
this is-
a
everything was
great thumbs
outstanding.
up to, and across a very wide variety of styles. And I'm, kind of looking back and trying to figure out what I like the best, and I have different favorites for different reasons. So that's when you kind of go, okay, this would be give me the Spindletap Flight because I'm loving it all.
I'm gonna say I like everything we tried today, but I want to talk about a couple outstanding points. Your IPAs, to me, are what I want in an IPA, which is not always the hoppiest,
Not always
up
pine
front
cone,
and
yeah.
finish and
Mhm.
all that other stuff. They're such a good balance, and that to me, I just love that. There's very
Thanks, Ian.
few IPAs out there that I think are that balanced overall. And it's not that I don't like them in general. It's just that I'm sick of the same thing over and over again, and
Correct,
these are
yes.
not that.
Correct. And I just want to mention that the ESB, the Honey Hole ESB, might be your most unique beer. Like in terms of the way that it stands out from the rest of the beers in your portfolio.
It is very unique, and we're proud of that. And
And I love it, by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah.
It's tasty
Yeah, yeah.
as it can be. And then that hazy IPA was just
Yeah.
juiced in. Oh my gosh.
thank you.
It's just like, oh man, you can just sock me away right now. This has been quite a show. So Leo, thank you. We want to make sure that you know that we would love for you to come back when you guys have something
Absolutely.
else that you want to make sure is showcased. That we have a chance to taste, or if you just want to come back and drink with us, that's cool too.
I'm always down for just drinking.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Well, that's a big part of what
We
the show is about.
practice.
Yes. So it has been a pleasure. Show number 78 comes to a close here. We want to thank our friends and sponsors at B&B Butchers and Restaurant on Washington Ave in Houston, and the shops at Clear Fork and Fort Worth. Get the bacon. It's worth it. It's worth driving in from another state, quite frankly, for the bacon. It's that good. We have run out of time for sampling the Mumford & Sons IPA. We'll have to get to that next week. But have a wonderful week, my friends. And we again, Leo, so appreciate you coming on the show. And thank you so much. Spindletap, it is an honor to reside in the city that is producing such great beer as you guys are. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.